Hi there. You're listening to the Everglade Chronicles, a reading. I'm Garrett Shave, the author. Well, folks, we are nearing the end. Today I am reading Chapter 10, The End Begins. Now let's get started. It rained on Friday, and even with my umbrella I was being transferred to the cold and wet jungle gym that served as the prison. The ground and air were soaking wet. I felt like a pig being sent to slaughter. The metal bars were so cold to the touch. They were a flourish of vibrant colors, red, orange, yellow, blue. It was the ministry, where the military gathered, that would be my prison. It had served that purpose in Jessica's time, and I found the place to be most fitting. I was placed in a small cell underneath a large slide. It was built by the designer to look like a gulag, outfitted with even a small window. I was expecting to see the Duchess here, but she was not. My guards were two 8th graders named Caleb and Elliot. Caleb was no taller than me, and he was much skinnier. He looked almost malnourished. I could have easily overpowered him, but Elliot was a force of his own. As an aristocrat, I was given better treatment than a normal prisoner would receive. I was given a bottle of cold water and a small package of salted crackers. I was also given half a cut kiwi. I ate the kiwi rather quickly and stared out the small window, licking my sticky fingers. It was only lightly drizzling, but the weather would put a damper on the festivities this evening. Even at school this week, I had not had time to speak with Oberon or Violet. I had spoken with Zack in the library, and he assured me that they were told. He gave me the feeling that a plan was in motion. As the rain persisted, I was visited by Lord Isaac, bathrobe and all. He kept insisting how the celebrations would be wondrous, and that I would miss out entirely. He came with an entourage of 2 young lads, both smaller than him. One struggled to hold a black umbrella over the Lord's head, as if he were some sort of king. I sighed. I had not wanted to miss the grand festivities, but since I was foolishly imprisoned, I would. "Oh, how the Emperor hates troublemakers," he said to me, pacing back and forth outside the cell. He kept both his hands in his sleeves like a monk. "Yes, I would imagine any ruler would hate troublemakers," I replied aimlessly. "You're just a simple fool, unable to obey commands," the Lord stressed with a sneering, overbearing tone. "Oh, go bother someone else," I found myself yelling. Lord Isaac was taken aback and left without another word. How thankful I was that he had gone from my presence. I stared at the rain and the grey clouds. I was worried. A small clap of thunder rumbled distantly. Did the Commandant really have a plan? The rain subsided in the late afternoon, just in time for the Emperor and his Elite Four to arrive and begin the grand celebrations. Summer was upon us, and I was missing everything. There was quite a bit of commotion from the center of the royal city. I had guessed that the Emperor was giving an address. I couldn't see much from my spot except my 2 guards. Following much applause, the Commandant found me. "How is the prisoner?" he asked. "Fine," Elliot replied sternly. "The Exalted One wishes for him to be present at the ceremony," Alexei said strictly. Caleb and Elliot looked at each other in absorbed thought. "What does Lord Isaac have to say about this?" Elliot asked. "Leave that lord out of it," Alexei stressed. "This is beyond his jurisdiction." The Commandant, with his black cape and mask, took me from my cell without another word. I could tell in his brown, gold-shimmering eyes that all was in place and that there should be no fear. His white-clad Templar guards waited for us on the other end of the maze that was the jungle gym. They had their blades drawn and looked excited. They looked almost like angelic saviors to me. Alexei himself was calm, like a steady pool of water. "Did His Majesty really invite me?" I asked, playing off the charade. Alexei nodded. "Yes, he did," he replied quietly. "Their Royal Highnesses are there as well, in good company." "Excellent news," I said, hardly containing my excitement. The playground was dark, but not dark enough to go unnoticed. The asphalt path was lined with small candle lights on torches, looking more tiki than royal. The storm clouds had cleared to reveal a serene night sky, dazzling with stars. Servants were handing out lemonade and iced tea, while the Emperor himself sat gallantly on his wicker throne, surrounded by his associates. They were all in full regalia. One could not see the face of the Emperor, save his stunning eyes. He wore his kabuto helmet, complete with plastic samurai armor. He looked like a samurai right out of a Japanese kabuki play. The Commandant kept me near the rear of the party, masked by the number of children chatting away. Hardly anyone could see us back here. The Elite Four will put up the biggest fight, Alexei said as we found a spot near a bush. I nodded, and from within the bush strolled Lady Sakura, carrying a lacquered Japanese umbrella. She had her flowing black hair down, and was outfitted in her traditional kimono. This one was pink and light blue with a floral pattern. Around her there were several children I had never met. I assumed that they were part of the resistance. They all possess weaknesses, Sakura said coldly, puckering her rouge lips. They are not truly immortal, as many have been led to believe. Yet they will all fight for their emperor, one of the white guards said. More rustling and more bodies appeared. This time they were recognizable. The beautiful Princess Violet came into view, followed by her stalwart husband and friend, the Prince Oberon. From behind him came my old friend, Duchess Madison. I felt a touch on my shoulder and found Victor, Lucille, and Eva around me. The group was complete. So, there really was a plan, I smirked thankfully. The Commandant and the Prince informed me of their phenomenal scheme. While I had been away under dire house arrest, everything came together. There were so many collective minds at work, it was truly amazing. Victor and Lucille had rallied the commons while Violet and Oberon trained their troops. Alexei discussed a mutiny with almost the entire army and reinforced the Emperor's great misdeeds upon everyone he came across. There was hardly anyone present tonight who wouldn't rebel. Not many of the other aristocrats favor the Emperor, the Duchess was saying. Even during my brief visits to the Emperor's perch, I was unable to find anyone there who truly liked the tyrant. I agree, Lady Sakura added. I know that more than anyone. This land has been lawless forever. My own brother disdains his position. I nodded. The Emperor was truly a dictator. He had used mysticism to veil his mortality and create a false image of godly supremacy. The only ones who would protect him now were the Elite Four, and they were powerful. They were the most gifted of the warriors and the most devoted. I had my doubts about my old friend Mantis, however. Even looking at him now, he appeared nervous and out of place. While the others stood astutely behind the Emperor's throne, he stood off to the side. He was not sure of his position, and we could definitely use that to our advantage. I told everyone what had happened with Mantis, and the one who seemed to care the most was Alexei. He bobbed deeply and touched his mask. Everyone knows of the Emperor's great crimes, Alexei said. They have already been told, and most already know. Mantis will fail to protect the Emperor, of that I am certain. The others, I am not so sure. Does anyone have a plan to eliminate them? Madison asked, concerned. The only capable fighter was the Commandant, whose skills matched the Elite Four. All 5 of them had been trained by the same master in one way or another. I would be able to take a few out, notably Fox or Crane, Alexei remarked. Tigress would be a challenge, and I could fail in battle with her. I am unable to take them all on. Sheer numbers should take out the stragglers, Oberon observed. I do not have a skilled champion to send into battle, so we must rely on numbers. Alexei passed me a small rapier, which I took gladly. It was lightweight and plastic, and it would do the job. The others had swords too, both big and small. Tonight, Oberon said triumphantly, this ends. We had spread ourselves out, and the Commandant took me to the front of the line. The Emperor had asked for me personally, so I had to face him. Lady Sakura lingered near the throne, while the others spread out through the crowd of children. Everyone was poised to attack. It would be a great and grand battle, and many would likely fall. These things had to happen if the meadow was to be rid of the dastardly Dragon Emperor. Both the Commandant and Oberon predicted that the Emperor would flee during the onset of the battle. He would run up the hill and hide in his perch, leaving his minions and security to face the masses. The Elite Four would likely go with him. Alexei said that 2 would stay to end the battle here, and 2 would go with him for protection. The strongest were expected to attend to His Majesty. I discussed the probable idea of an attack with the Emperor this afternoon. This would be the perfect time to capture the Gaia Royals. Alexei remarked as we stood within the crowd. I nodded. What did you say? Well, he remarked gladly, being the head of the military has its perks. I give the commands. The Emperor consented within the presence of the other Elite Four. I was going to have Fox protect the Prince and Princess, while Mantis quelled the crowd. Crane and Tigress would retreat with the Emperor up the hill. I call it Order 99. I giggled, noting the Star Wars reference. Did you tell Oberon to slice Fox's throat? I could see Alexei smiling under his mask. I told the Dragon Emperor that if their royal highnesses were to die in this battle, all would be lost. Gaia would certainly rise up and chaos would reign full. I'm right, you know. That is exactly what would happen. But Oberyn is strong enough to kill Fox, I figured. That or Violet will do the job. Mantis would not be able to quell the crowd, I said, staring up at him. He is not in a present state of mind, and his judgment would be flawed. Exactly. He would, unfortunately, be caught up in the wave of terror and likely killed. I nodded. So it must happen. I enjoyed Mantis, but he was an evildoer. He worked for the wrong side, and if he were to die in this battle, then so be it. There was not much I could do to save him now. All would be lost if I interceded. As we approach the throne, I will step back a little. George here, my main guard, will tell a white lie. I will excuse myself and come back later, yelling of some commotion. Play along. I nodded. The idea was to get everyone riled up. Everyone must be in a frenzy. People lose their judgment and their cool when everyone is in a delirium, especially when it's a large crowd. The cattle would be thoroughly rustled. Your Imperial Majesty, the Commandant bowed gracefully. I sunk to my knees. I present Lord Theo of Cloverleaf, if you can even call him that. Look who it is, Lord Isaac sneered from near the Emperor. The court jester. The Dragon Emperor nodded and I rose. George stepped near Alexei. What's that? Alexei asked George. Exalted One, I must excuse myself. There seems to be a bit of commotion over there. Again the Emperor nodded. Do what you must. It is a party after all. We must have order. I should hope whatever is happening will be stopped, Lord Isaac said, rubbing his hands together gingerly. Alexei and George left our little circle while I could feel the eyes of the Dragon Emperor and his cohorts upon me. They eyed me like hungry lions. Mantis was the only one with sympathetic eyes. You asked for me, Your Majesty? He nodded. Yes, you are a lord still, are you not? You should enjoy the celebrations. Summer is upon us, and an extraordinary summer it will be. I have many plans. Something to do with Gaia, I would imagine. A modest lord such as yourself, a traitor, does not need to know such things. Crane was quick to snap at me. I cowered back, feigning fear. Tigress laughed. Before I could say much else, the Commandant was rushing through the crowd, his cape flapping. Your Majesty, his tone was urgent. A commotion, unstoppable. There is a brawl going on. The Emperor leaned forward. Speak slowly. This was the battle I had predicted. The people are rallying for Gaia, Alexei exclaimed, upset. The revolt is starting, Fox remarked, shocked. Fear slapped the Emperor's face like a cold burst of winter wind. His eyes were expressions, wide open with shock and exploding with fear. Then let us fight back and enact the plan, the Emperor remarked with sudden confidence, nodding towards the Commandant. Execute Order 99. Fox, Alexei began. Find their royal highnesses and stay close to them. They must not be harmed. Once this is done, you will escort them to the perch for imprisonment. Tigress and Crane, retreat with the Emperor up the hill to his perch. Finally, Mantis, I need you to quell the crowd if things begin to get unruly. I have to go and deal with this. Everyone but Mantis nodded, and within seconds the entire area was canvassing panic. Kids were yelling and fighting, security moving in like hordes. Lord Isaac was running back and forth like a chicken without a head. Hello! I am just interrupting the narrative for a moment to discuss this book's Ask the Author segment. Typically it is slotted in between chapters, but this time around I am hosting it at the end. Think about some questions to ask, and soon you will get the opportunity to submit. Stay tuned for advertising promoting the Ask the Author segment. Now, back to the narrative. I had lost Alexei in the crowd, and all of the children were moving about now, flustered and in a wild fever. Cups were overturned. The throne had been knocked over. Mantis had drawn his katana, and there was a battle erupting. I did not need to draw my sword, as over half the audience gathered here was on my side. Many were clanging blades, waving maces, and throwing axes around. I managed to find Oberyn and Violet, who were struggling with Fox. Oberyn had him in a neck hold, while Violet was reaching for his scabbard. "Bloody traitors!" Fox was hollering. "How dare you!" Violet drew his chain whip and swiftly stabbed him, sending Fox to the ground. The two left him for dead as the audience moved on, and the fighting quelled. "Mantis," I hollered, "get out of the way if you wish to live." He could barely hear me over the din, but he seemed to understand. He was overtaken quickly once his weapon was down. He stared at me with his watery eyes as Alexei's men took him down. "Don't kill him," I said, running over. I waved my hands up in the chaos, hollering for his guards to stop. Alexei stood nearby, his black cape flapping in the evening gust. "Don't kill him," I repeated, running out of breath. Alexei looked over at Mantis and simply nodded. He understood. He would be jailed, but not killed. The remaining loyalists had been either killed or taken into custody. I marveled at the number of boys and girls who were fighting for us, who would openly betray the Emperor. Much like in the time of Queen Isis, the end would happen on the hill. It was the final stronghold for the Emperor, and certainly he would remember this from her time. "We are moving out for the Emperor's perch now, with a large army behind us," Alexei said, standing near the overturned throne. Oberon and Violet were there as well, along with Madison and Sakura. "The Emperor and the last of his friends will be held up there, likely in the old tree fort," Madison explained, pointing up to some trees. As she pointed, a figure came rushing down the hill. I stood back, trying to identify the character in the night. It was Crane, and he was moving fast. "The very idea that you should betray the Exalted One summons a taste of disgust in my mouth," Crane hollered, reaching for his sword. Crane came swooping down, his blade drawn and ready for a flight. He flew directly at Madison, nipping her with his sword. She came falling rather dramatically while he rounded on a few others. Alexei and his white-clad men had their swords drawn already and were fighting him 4-1. We all stood back, and I find myself near my oldest of friends. "This is their fight now," Victor said. "Alexei is as skilled as Crane. They are evenly matched." For a while they paired and dueled, swords clanging and flying. Alexei was swift, even with his cape flapping in the wind. He moved like a phantom in the night. His moves were wildly unpredictable. His guards had backed off, knowing that they would lose this fight. One had already lost, and they were nursing him. Madison had only been scraped in the battle. She was going to be fine. "Go on!" the Commandant finally yelled. "Stop wasting your time watching us fight. Go on! Go up the hill and end this all." I nodded, and the rest seemed to follow. Crane didn't want us to go, but we would surely overwhelm him if he stopped to fight us. Instead, he growled through his teeth and attacked Alexei. I knew the Commandant would be fine, and he would be proclaimed victorious. We had another fight to face. That concludes Chapter 10, The End Begins. It is clear the writing is on the wall. The Dragon Emperor must be extinguished once and for all. Join me soon for the final chapter, Chapter 11, The Final Assault. Take care for now. Dragon Boats by Fass is the music used during this novel on the podcast. Find us online on Facebook and Instagram by searching @Everglade Chronicles. You can find all 3 of the Everglade Chronicles novels exclusively on Amazon. Thank you kindly for your support.